like to share with you perhaps some of the background and how we got to these numbers. So we all know that the headline figure is 9.0%. And really the reason for me being at this position is we want to ground the discussions that are going to follow me within the Hong Kong context. So we've been looking at the bigger picture, and we're going to hear what's happening elsewhere in the world, but by giving you these Hong Kong numbers, we can then make progress on what needs to happen in Hong Kong. We primarily looked at the representation of women in multinational companies operating in Asia. So what's really different about this report is that we're looking at the local corporate sector. These are some of the reports we've done, and with all our research, the primary objective is really to raise awareness, to educate and facilitate discussion. And I think by the reactions that we've had so far this week and the amount of noise we've created, this new report that we published this week has actually gone a long way to doing that, so we're very pleased about that. As Shalini mentioned, this is actually the third study of its kind for Asia. We did the first one for Hong Kong back in November 2009, and then we did one for India based on the Bombay Stock Exchange in 2010. So the study that we launched earlier this week is actually an update to the one that we did 2.5 years ago, and it focuses primarily on the data. Looking at the composition of the Hang Seng Index, it comprises 48 companies, which is actually an increase from the last time when we did this study. At that time, it was 42 companies. So we wanted to be sure, how had the composition, the distribution changed, if at all. And we looked at this and saw that despite this increase, and we've seen an increase in number of directorships, the split between executive directors and non-executive directors has remained fairly consistent, and also the split between independent and non-independent. We found that out of 634 total directorships, just 57 were taken on by women, and this represents this famous 9.0% figure, which is, as we've all agreed, it's a disappointing figure, and it's a very nominal increase from the last time that we did this study when it was 8.9%. The number of executive directors has remained static at 15. We've seen no change in that number, and because the number of companies on the overall index has increased, and with it the number of directorship roles, that means the overall percentage has actually declined in terms of executive director roles. So how does Hong Kong compare internationally? If you look at this chart, you can see that we're somewhere in the middle. We lag behind Australia, UK, US, and most notably Norway, but we are actually ahead of some of our counterparts in the region, including Singapore and Malaysia. Out of the 48 companies, 20 companies have all male boards, which in other words means that 41.7% actually have no women on their boards at all. In this study, we pay some particular attention to female executive directors. YT said actually the most important issue to look at is the number of independent directors, but we look at executive directors as this is often seen as a real measure of gender diversity for an organisation, because it indicates that the corporate environment is such that women are actually able to rise up through the organisation to reach the top levels. The female directors, as I mentioned, there are 57 female directorships, and these are held by 50 different women, which means obviously that some women hold more than one directorship, which isn't unusual. But we do need to be conscious that we should be widening the talent pool and not just giving more roles to the same group of women. We also look at tenure, so how long are the directors staying on their boards? And if we look at this average number, it doesn't seem unreasonable. For men, it's 6.5 years. For women, it's 4.8. But I think we then also looked at the range. So this average figure belies the fact that actually some people are holding these roles for 44 years in the case of men, and 35 years in the case of women. If we assume 5 new female directors are appointed every 3 years and the total number of directors remains unchanged, it would take 80 years to achieve 30% of females on our boards, or 156 years for parity. Companies in the financial sector perform best. The range of women ranges from 0 to 5, and percentages 0% to 31.3%. And we were looking for a positive finding. So one of the positive findings we identified was that if you do look at the percentage of the top 3 ranking companies, that is actually higher than what that was in 2009. And they all have at least 4 women. The top 6 ranking companies have at least 3 women on their boards. And this is, we've heard, this is deemed to be a critical mass. A quote that I read the other day that I like, that I'll just share with you, was that 1 woman on a board is token, 2 women is a presence, 3 women is a voice. So this magic number of 3 seems to be what we need to be looking for as we drive progress.